Hey guys, I'm DQ, and I wanted to address something real quick because this software has been extremely useful to me, but there are a few things that you don't find in tutorials out on the internet that isn't explained, and it's the bit that was missing for me. Once that clicked in, I kind of fully understood what I needed to do with the software, and it made a whole lot more sense. And then I managed to be able to build everything. So you can find beginners tutorials and things like that in other channels. What I want to discuss is the principles behind it, because I think the explanation of those principles would actually help you build and improve and explore whatever you need to do within the software. And it is actually extremely simple, but it is unfortunately something that just hasn't been addressed. You can find the step-by-step ones. Dex Bhakti, the developer behind Quadspinner Gaea, he has some amazing videos put online that you can find, and very detailed and very, whatever you need to do. But the simple thing that I wanted to address is how you get from, a relatively unimpressive looking flat weird surface to a more or less fully developed scene. Right, so that's pretty much what we'll be after. There are a couple of bugs. You'll see me clicking backwards and forwards between them, but it's very simple. So the first thing that you need to consider is that you really have 3 steps. For the most part, you only really have 3 steps. You have a simple primitive creation step, which is basically where you just take a primitive, move it around. Right, so that's all this is. This is moved and scaled around to form something a little bit bigger. You create another one of a different shape, of a different seed. Again, transform. You get it to the back. You kind of decide, well, I want that to be a bit of a high point. Combine them together, you end up with something like this. Add one more piece. In my case, a crater that I just wanted to give a bit, a bit more interest to what was happening there. Again, transform, move it so that it looks like a relief of sorts. Combine it with the previous one. That's pretty much it. That's all there is to it. And then displace, the way you can think of displace is just jittering things about so that it adds a bit more chaos. So that's the first phase of it. That's pretty much all there is to it. You just grab bits and pieces of primitives. You can find them up here. Play around with them. You'll see that all of them have various purposes and various effects that you can find extremely useful, but for the sake of simplicity, I just stuck to these. The second one is the let's say sculpting phase. It's not really sculpting, but this is where you start adding detail, where it starts looking a lot more natural. So once you have your final node that you want to use that will eventually feed into the erosion system, you take that, you plug it into the first. It really is a combination of just erosion and masking. That's all there is to it. You add an erosion, it goes from this thing to something that looks a lot more natural. This isn't the default settings. Play around with these. And depending on your computer, you might want to not keep the lock enabled. So just leave that in such a way that you can just press apply. You have that. It looks good already. Then you add, I've added a terrace, so it's just one more thing from, where is it? It's in here, right? So you've now moved to the erosion panels. Where is the terrace? I keep losing them because they're so small. Anyway, you can find them all in there. And once you're done with that, then, well, you can add another erosion, and you'll start seeing even more details get into it, right? This is where you'll start seeing like sediments, flows, and things like that. You add another erosion, depending, if you shorten the duration, the softness, and strength, where you mimic a bit less of an expansive time, where it downcuts in a sharp way, right? You'll end up with these riverbeds. Then, again, you can use a selector, right, from curvature. Where are these? These are here. So you use a selector so that you can add as a mask. Again, put another erosion in, and what this will do is it will emphasize those riverbeds into something a bit more intense. This is only at 0.5K. The higher you go, the better it'll look, but this is just a community version, so that should help. That's pretty much all there is to do on this side to get you started. Obviously, there are more nodes. You can go into them. That's not the purpose of this video. I just wanted to split this into phases. You have the primitive creation phase, you have an erosion phase, and then you have a texturing phase. And these are the simple 3 steps to it. Then you convert this to a texture. There are 2 ways that you can get into it, but you can convert it to a texture or use another type of data map. Texture is one of the heavier ones, so I would suggest using this sparingly because it will slow down your build times, even at 0.5. And I have a 64-thread computer with pretty high-end GPUs in it with Radeon 7s, and it still takes a bit of time. So use these wisely. Don't abuse them. But once you have that erosion, so erosion is geometry, texture gets into the color side of things. So this is where you start, playing around with colors. You extract a texture from the erosion, feed it into a satmap, and then you get some details like this. You just play around with these bits here. Again, take another one, mask it in a different way. So I wanted to have a bit of an emphasis on the mountain faces here a little bit. Again, feed it into a texture, get it to satmaps, right? And this will look a bit weird, but it'll make sense in a bit. Because you can use these as masks. So even if, this effect, you don't necessarily see it translated here, once you blend these 2 satmaps with a mixer, you'll see them make a lot more sense. And to show you what I mean, if I swap inputs, right? That's what happens. You end up having darker areas because that's where it blends the most. You can play around with these. Again, there are other tutorials out there that would explain. I only wanted to explain the principles behind it. And then, again, you get into a slope. You get into more sharp details. You want to select rock faces and things like that. You don't need to add more maps to it unless you want to. But if you feed the previous mixer into another mixer, and then the rock sat map into this last mixer, and you use this slope as a mask, then that's pretty much what you end up with. And again, play around with the factors and everything. There's a lot more to it, but hopefully this will be easy enough to explain just the principles behind how this software works, because you can find a lot of tutorials out there that explain how to do these things step by step, but I think that doesn't explain the principles, and I think it's more important to understand the principles because then you'll be able to build on them. So without any further ado, I won't actually lengthen this anymore. I just wanted to throw this out there, and if you want to see more of these, you can let me know. You can find me, you can comment on this in the YouTube channel if you want to. This is my first video that I upload actually. You can comment here, or you can follow me on Twitter, on twitter.com/thecuteness, and I stream on Saturdays as well. You can find me on Twitch under DQ_creative. Anyway, long story with the name, I'm not going to go into it. I hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, let me know what you think, and we can get into more detail with this.